Okay, everybody, I'm Brett Kinsella. I am the founder of Voicebot.ai. I think most of you will already know that. I'm really excited that we're doing, I believe this is our 5th year of Year in Review podcasts. Maybe it's the 4th year. I think it's the 4th year. It's hard to remember. We've been doing this for a long time. Some of our guests today have been on before, so they'll correct me. But this is one of the things I really like to do every year is to take a look back, because that sets us up nicely to look forward. As many of you know, we have an annual predictions article that comes out on the 22nd. On January 1st, 2022. We do that every year on the 1st. But this is a really good time for us to have the context of what led us up to what those predictions are actually going into. We might even hit on predictions a little bit here today, but mostly we want to talk about the year that was and how that's shaping where we're headed as an industry. And so I'm going to bring to the stage my guest today. And there will be 4 of us today. And we just completed a year in review with 3 executives from Europe. And so I thought it would be good to do Europe and the US, but we're going to talk globally. So we will have no boundaries to our conversation today. And joining me first, maybe Chithra, you could introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, and why don't you just tee us up with what you thought was the biggest story of 2021 in voice?
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Brett. In terms of the biggest story in my mind, I actually am resorting to the story with the release of the Astro Robot by Amazon. I'm really excited about Amazon taking new direction with the Echo device and all the possibilities with that. So I'm really excited to see where that pans out in 2022. My name is Chithra Durgam. I am the owner of Blue Check Skill, where we create voice skills to allow celebrities and large businesses to amplify and promote their brands on Amazon Alexa and Google Home. And we also provide sonic branding for businesses. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Okay, Todd Mozer, same for you. A little bit about your background in sensory and what you thought was the top story of the year.
Sure. Thanks, Brett. I'm Todd Mozer, President and CEO of Sensory. We've been around in the speech space for a really long time. We're probably the longest living company in the space as an independent. We've traditionally done independent edge-based AI technologies like speech recognition and wake words and large vocabulary and biometrics. And it's been an interesting year for us as a business because we're now moving into the cloud as well with hybrid solutions. In terms of things that were big this year, I guess I have 2 perspectives. One is I'm an avid consumer of these technologies, but also as a CEO. So as a CEO, I think the financial markets and how they've treated us are really, really interesting. I mean, the fact that Nuance was acquired, it looks like the final hurdle just passed within the last few days for Nuance to be acquired by Microsoft for $20 billion plus or minus. SoundHound merging with the SPAC at a $2 billion valuation, Verbit raising money at a $2 billion valuation. Just these pretty amazing valuations that we're seeing in the space are really interesting from the CEO perspective. As a consumer, I have a little bit of disappointment that I will lodge because I've got all sorts of smart speakers over the house. And I feel like they're turning on too many ad-based things. I'm seeing, Google Home is asking me to upgrade to YouTube Music. And I just found out that I can't have 2 Amazon speakers in different rooms playing different songs. And now they ask me, do I want to end the music in one room and move it to a different one? And it's ironic because I actually have multiple accounts. I just didn't set them up that way. So a little bit of frustration on the consumer side.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, Eric Schwartz.
Yes, I'm Eric Schwartz. I'm the head writer for Voicebot.ai. So working with Brett to publish all the interesting stories of the year. For me, I would say just looking at a macro perspective, there's an interesting trend in people now seem to understand how voice assistants work and how voice technology works to the point where companies can get much more experimental. So you're seeing things like at the Astro Robot, or you're seeing companies experimenting with different kinds of devices and making them more proactive, for better or worse, when it comes to advertisements and suggestions. Because because they understand now that most people who are using these devices don't need to have their hands held. They can be shown some of the more exciting opportunities, even if they don't necessarily want to hear about them.
Absolutely. And what do you do?
I am the head writer for Voicebot.ai, so I'm going to be the one writing a lot of the stories, deciding, or at least showing my version of what the top stories of the year are.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I think we'll start off with you because you just wrote a story. This appeared within the last 24 hours on Voicebot.ai, and this is about some leaked information from a memo that was, or actually it's more than one memo, and some of them are a bit dated, from internally from Amazon, and Bloomberg reported on this. Eric, what did you learn?
Yes, so this was definitely really interesting. Bloomberg got its hands on 3 or 4 years worth of internal memos and documents from Amazon all about Alexa. So everything from strategy plans to reports on sales and usage. And although Amazon, as you said, pointed out that a lot of it is out of date or not accurate anymore, it did seem to show that there's been a precipitous drop in how many Echo smart speakers are being sold. And there's some shocking, in my opinion, percentages of people who will use an Alexa device for a week and then just stop using it entirely. And there was a comment about how people will find half of all the Alexa skills they're going to use for their entire usage of Alexa in 3 hours, and then that's about it. So it seems like there's a sort of saturation of the market in terms of devices and a difficulty holding on to people's interest once they get their Echo device. But I think that ties into what I was saying before, where there's this point where, okay, you can't just sell them an Echo Dot. You have to engage with them in some other way, or find a way to keep them engaged with their device once they open it up. So I think that it's telling, even if, as Amazon says, a lot of it is not necessarily true anymore.
It is always about the applications. And interestingly enough, Todd, you mentioned some frustrations you had with your devices, Amazon devices, in your introduction. So maybe you could share your thoughts on this new data that's hit the market around internal Amazon memos.
Well, look, Amazon and Google have done so well in getting their speakers out there. It makes sense that at some point there's going to be some market penetration. I mean, taking a bigger picture look at what's going on. I mean, Google owns basically the Android ecosystem. Apple owns the iOS ecosystem. Those are the two biggest markets of devices with microphones attached to them. And Amazon has a challenge to break in there. They're trying things like the voice interoperability initiative to get into more things. And they're doing a good job, I think, of opening up other markets besides speakers, but they have a huge challenge. So I'm not surprised that the speaker market's starting to get saturated. We'll see if they continue investing like they have been in the past. I think you pointed out all the money they're spending and all the money they're losing on doing this.
Absolutely. All right. So Chithra, your thoughts on this recent news?
I always thought that with Alexa, the main issue was the technology rather than the actual devices itself. And I think as they've rolled out the custom assistants, I think that's going to show itself more, where the market is kind of getting diluted in terms of the type of device that people are using to actually use Alexa. But I don't see any dwindling in terms of people wanting to use the device. I think they need perhaps a little bit more guidance in terms of how they could use it. I think Amazon could do a much better job in guiding consumers in their advertisements, as well as in talking to consumers about how they can use the device to its full potential. And I think that can make a huge difference for a lot of people to understand that it's not just for music and weather, that you can actually create a skill on it and how you can do that. I also think that younger developers really need support from Amazon. And I think if they got that support, you would see the quality of the apps that are made, or the quality of the voice skills improving over time. from what I've seen, I feel like Amazon was kind of looking for the next Candy Crush with some of the skills, and a lot of the competitions that they had. They were judging a lot of the skills based on videos that were submitted, as opposed to whether the skill itself was quality and was going without bugs over time. And I think improving the quality in general can also attract more consumers. And so I think, having people such as myself or other experts in this field who could kind of give feedback, if they were open to it, I think could help a lot. But I think, a lot of people are interested in using voice and voice assistants. And I think over time, you're going to see that's going to improve over the years.
Yeah, so I think we saw over the last couple of years, or excuse me, the first couple of years where Alexa skills were being rolled out, is that there was a premium on the engagement aspect of the skill. And what we've seen from user behavior is that there tends to be more of a focus on the utility of the skill, sort of the usefulness, a lot of really short interaction, maybe single turn type of queries. And I wonder if we've entered an era, and some of the Amazon data suggests this would be the case, where it's really much more about utility than about engagement. What are your thoughts on that? Because you're building in this space right now.
Right. I would have to say it should be about engagement. If we look at the demographics of especially the young people who are of the TikTok generation, they're really interested in knowing everything about a celebrity or everything about a business and the behind the scenes of what's happening. And so for that generation, for them to be interested, it's about creating products that make them think of great things that are going to give a wow experience. If they were to brand more of the products, I know they did that with Billie Eilish and some other musicians, but if we took these products and actually started to brand them more with like sneaker brands and other brands to kind of give a little bit more customization to the actual voice assistants, I think that could be huge for Amazon. But I also think that we need to be creating skills and getting the support so that they are bringing value to the end consumer. And I think at times that may be immersive, at times that could be very short-lived. It depends on the actual consumer, but if done right without bugs, and if it has a lot of vitality to it, I think it could be done really well over time.
Yes. Go ahead.
Sorry.
One of the challenges I see with skills is that it really, in line with what Chithra was saying, is that I don't think enough technology has been put into making the skills better. Technology by Amazon. If I compare interacting with Alexa versus interacting with a skill, they're very different experiences. I think the speech recognition in Alexa is quite good, but it seems like it's really crippled within the skills. And the whole concept that you can have, they're different environments. So if I want to adjust the volume when I'm within a skill, I have to leave the skill and go back to Alexa. It creates a very awkward kind of interface. And I use Jeopardy all the time. I can't believe how many times we'll get the answer right and they'll tell us it's wrong. And then sometimes I can just mumble a little bit and get one of the words right and I'll get the answer right. So it's not very accurate.
Eric, I thought you had something to say.
Oh, I was just going to say I definitely agree with what Chithra is saying. I think Amazon recognizes that partly. They recently announced that they're changing their the division of revenue for the paid skills to give more to developers if they're a small enough developer, and they've been experimenting with some of the other ways of encouraging developers to play with Alexa to come up with new ways to use it, with their new update, I guess you would say.
Do you think? Let me ask you a question, Eric. So you just mentioned this idea that they went to 80% share of revenue from skills from 70%, which is that really out of the beneficence of the organization, or is that because they're trying to match what the legal proceedings are pushing towards in the iOS ecosystem?
I was going to say, I think it is partly trying to keep up, but I also think it's, I suspect, talking about younger developers and designers, I suspect that there's some, I would not be surprised if some of the younger people working at Amazon are trying to push for a more open or more of a direct, everything goes to the developer until they reach a certain size system, because they recognize that that's how you get people to try things out, because they feel like they have nothing to lose and everything to gain from it. But I do think it's also that with the nature of Amazon being, it's not just a tech company. It's definitely not just a voice tech company. There's so many other things going on that they want to try to keep it all as seamless as possible. I mean, which can be good when it comes to using, cross promotion, to use the voice assistant to promote something on the TV or vice versa. But it does mean that anything that seems like it might compete with another area of Amazon on the voice assistant could get pushed out or not get the support that it should get in order to help the ecosystem as a whole succeed.
I think 80% of zero or near zero is really just not interesting.
Yeah.
I think this just goes back to the idea that we have not seen really strong engagement applications on Alexa or Google Assistant, any of the Bixby, any of the voice ecosystems, and it might be a bad interaction mode for that. It's certainly really good for the quick command and control interactions, and we see that those are the items. Even Todd was talking about music. Play this, play that, change the volume. Aside from the other issues that he has in terms of the interoperability, the devices, those things are absolutely working. And so we see this as like the utilitarian workhorse is really favored by the consumers. And maybe the engagement it's just not good for this mode of interaction, or maybe it's just that we don't have the right type of applications and that people have been sort of reaching for the wrong fit all along.
I'd add news to the list of really nice, valuable things. We stopped subscribing to newspapers, and every morning I ask Alexa to give me the update on the news, and I'll flip around between CNN and NPR and different news stations. And I love that it will report daily news to me.
Yeah, and if you listen, and you might get ads in there because they allow ads inside of flash briefings, but you'll definitely get it if you get the news from Google. They started running ads early this year or late last year. Like there'd be it's like a 1 minute spot from PwC in the middle of things. You mentioned YouTube. It is so interesting to me that for years we heard them say, "Oh, we can't destroy the user experience. You can't have ads," and now we have the platforms themselves serving ads. But then also we've seen, like in games, for example, this year, we started seeing third-party ads and things like Question of the Day. So, I mean, Chithra, what do you think about that in terms of monetization? Because I think in your work, you're really more focused on, we could say engagement, but this idea of, providing access from fans to celebrities and maybe some businesses to do FAQs and those types of things. What do you think about the addition of advertising as a new revenue stream? Is that going to make a difference, you think?
I think advertising is really helpful also just to market the skill and give discoverability. I mean, discoverability has been a major issue with a lot of skills. And so whatever we can do, and I think we're going to see this played out more in the next few years, is different combinations to offer more discoverability, whether it's Alexa being used on different platforms or, having different access to Alexa aside from the voice assistants. But I think the advertising themselves, I mean, there has to be a point where it becomes too much. And when you get inundated with banner ads on Web 2.0, we realize, that wasn't working and people weren't going to those sites. Similarly with the voice assistants, I think there has to be an understanding that people do not want to be listening to a song and all of a sudden be interrupted by an advertisement. And how do we do, this delivery of marketing information in a better way? And just like you see in product advertising, let's say on a movie or on television, I think that should be played out more within voice skills. So if somebody is actually trying to advertise a product, they should team up with someone who has a voice skill, a celebrity, or let's say another business,
right,
and try to advertise on those. I think that would be a better play.
Yeah, sponsorship is definitely, I think, a stronger way to get the word out without annoying people, because they're already using a skill that they want to use, but then it has the additional mention of something else they may be interested in.
Yeah, I think for a lot of the skills that we saw, the rationale for them was not strong, and some of them actually were just based on like marketing campaigns. It was designed for something that has a short shelf life and not this long-term interaction. But I wanted to sort of build on that because Chithra, you mentioned you thought the Astro Robot was the number one news of the year, but we can just talk about devices in general. I'm happy to have you riff on the robot as well. Is it maybe we just haven't had all of the right uh, interaction modes, the right type of devices? Because we're seeing the voice activated glasses coming out, which there's a lot of interest in. We certainly have seen earbuds take off in terms of their capabilities. I know Todd knows a lot about that, but the robot, maybe that's something that kicks us up to the next level, because it really seems like, if I look at the market data, we've plateaued in the voice space in terms of adoption, in terms of intensity of use, and the Amazon data seems to support what we're seeing in general consumer surveys. So why don't you break that down a little bit in terms of the way you think about it?
Well, I actually think, in terms of like the different devices that are available, I think it's going to be great just because it shows the continued commitment by Amazon to make sure that the Alexa technology reaches more households. They've obviously been able to get by up to this point with when we look at the Voicebot.ai articles on how they were creating a lot of the devices for a while at a loss. So they are able to be, well positioned to be able to do this long term because, like you mentioned before, Brett, their end game is really to get more people to purchase from their actual business. And so to be able to see these other devices, it's great. I love it. I love seeing the fact that the Astro robot follows the person around. If you're someone that's trying to save time by using voice, this gives another added luxury to whatever they're doing already. And so I like the ability to have those voice skills kind of moving around with the user and giving them the information that they need. In addition, being able to deliver products from one person to the next. I think it's just like a really cute idea, this idea of having robots. We've seen a lot of robots come on the scene recently, the $600 to $1,000 range. And the voice activation portion of it is interesting, not only to add companionship to a lot of children who are during the pandemic, having like a lot of social isolation, but also enabling people to have their technology around with them. We've heard about Alexa also having some ability to detect motion and different sounds, and being able to carry that through with the Astro robot, I think is amazing as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this technology plays out in the future. And they've really made it kind of almost like exclusive by having people sign information to see if they're eligible to get it. So even that's intriguing.
Todd, you're a device guy. What do you think?
So the robot space is really interesting to me. I think it's cool that Amazon's moving into it. Maybe they can do something that nobody else has really been successful at so far. Sure. We've put speech recognition into probably 20 robots over the years, and most of them have failed. But what's interesting is the slice that has done well versus those that have failed. It's the high-end ones that seem to keep failing. And we've done like toy robotic products a lot.
That's right.
When Sony came out with their Aibo, there were probably 4 different companies that wanted to come out with lower cost robotic dogs, and we happened to be in all 4 of those. And those did extremely well, but those were products that were selling for $100 or less. When we're in more expensive products like a Jibo or something like that, we found that there really needs to be a lot of value created beyond just some voice interaction and a little movement for people to want to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I did an article for USA Today a couple years ago where they'd asked me to opine on the robot space. I think it was Mayfield and Jibo both recently failed. And my observation was that those robots were trying to do a lot of use cases, kind of like the general purpose assistants. They're trying to do just a little bit of everything. And the problem they faced was this lower cost, more powerful solution. The smart speaker came in and displaced 90% of the use cases that they were going to fulfill. And so then they had to base their value proposition on a $1,000 price point on this 10% which they thought was going to be differentiated. And then the suppliers of the applications didn't have that big of an incentive to work with them. And so, I think if we look at Amazon and with Astro, it's really interesting what they've done there. It seems like they might be the ones who could actually make this work. I'm not convinced that market is going to go anywhere, frankly. Certainly, I don't think it's going to go anywhere in the next couple of years. But having Amazon in there and having like a real product and user focused aspect sort of gives me more confidence that it might be interesting. I mean, I think that the more interesting space around devices really is the wearables. We still see some advances in the hearables. We're seeing some nice feature additions there. And also we have a lot of movement on the smart glasses front, which Eric has done a lot of research on. So Eric, maybe you could talk a little bit about the smart glasses and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot. I think I wonder how much of it is because of Apple sort of dominating with the AirPods so much that there's been more experimentation with either cheaper devices or devices that have other purposes. But the smart glasses, especially the purely audio smart glasses, which essentially puts the smart speaker in the sides of your glasses, have popped up and become a much bigger market from Amazon, from Baidu, from Razer, and from even Meta / Facebook and Ray-Ban now. I think it's that idea that you're not going to use your smart speaker when you're not at home. So so those companies need a way to like have you constantly using it. And so if you wear prescription glasses, or if you're going to be outside in the sun and you're going to wear glasses anyway, this is a way for them to make sure that you're still connected to the voice assistant. And I think that the holographic lens or augmented reality version, which I personally quite enjoyed in the North Focals before they were bought by Google. Who knows what Google will do with that technology, but there's a lot of opportunity in those kind of wearables, and I think it's telling that even when a wearable is purely focused on a particular area like health, as with the Halo device that Amazon put out, it only took a few months before they realized that they had made a mistake not including Alexa on it, so they had to add to it. And I would also say, I know it's not technically a wearable, but the way they're being pitched and the way that the technology is developing, I would say that the automotive voice assistant is becoming a kind of wearable, in the sense that you're not it's not in the house, and it's mobile and it's somewhere that you're going anyway, but it interacts with the driver like they're wearing glasses and getting directions, or it interacts like they're wearing earbuds and they want to pull up their music. It has that sort of same feel, and the marketing around what was it, the Google the Fiat that they explicitly labeled as a Google Assistant, and Amazon coming out with that ad last year about whether a car was a Buick or an Alexa, and their new push for exactly that sort of connection where the ambient voice assistant is always there, whether you're wearing it or driving in it or it's around you at home. I think that's at least for now, that seems to be the angle that those companies are pursuing.
Yeah. Todd, what do you think about other devices in this space? You obviously supply technology to many beyond robots. Where are you optimistic, if anywhere?
So I'm really excited about the whole AR VR space and how glasses are going to move into that. I think the big question there is, how long is it going to take? There's so many history lessons in technology where there's this giant market that we know will emerge, but we don't know when. Speech recognition was in that space for 15 years and then finally took off. AR will be huge. I think the different approaches are interesting. When Google introduced Glass, they kind of built it up with Sergey Brin wearing them and hiring models. like it was going to be this huge thing, and it bombed. If you compare that with somebody like Snap and their spectacles, they're doing a much more interesting kind of approach where they're really not rolling it out in a big way. They're not trying to get lots of users. They're not trying to get it everywhere. They're trying to build developers and advance the technology until it's ready. And I think the Snap approach is really interesting. And we will have something for sure within the next 10 years that's really usable. But whether it's in the next year or two, who knows?
Yeah. So spectacles, I'm glad you brought those up because they were essentially single purpose devices. People aren't familiar with them. You could basically take a picture, had some of the same features that Google Glass had that everyone seemed to be up in arms about. But once Snap rolled them out, they were like, oh, this is just a nice, fun social media thing from a nice, fun social media company. And I think it's interesting because what they did is they essentially simplified the problem. They basically said, we're just going to do one thing well. I think we're seeing that time and again where smart speakers are really good at timers and alarms and music and a couple other use cases. Great. So they've really nailed those. But people want them to be more than that. And sometimes you just really need one application to be successful. And so I think that really makes a lot of sense for the smart glasses. And it might be that Google Glass certainly it's true that they sold it incorrectly because they said it could do too much. And the AR aspect of it really was not very good, most of it, when it probably could have provided just a couple of useful use cases at that time. And if they just focused on that, they would have gotten a core set of users and they could have built on it.
Plus, Google famously is terrible at social media. When they pitched it as a potential social media connection, I think something happened there. There's almost a curse on Google every time they try to do anything social media related. It always has a spectacular failure.
Okay, so I think we've talked about that enough. We can come back to it if people want to talk about it a little bit more. But I thought I would bring up another point here. So, Chithra, if I remember correctly, you were the first person to bring up custom assistants in our little introductory round. And I think one of the things, and there's several examples here. So Spotify, Wells Fargo, we've certainly seen them in financial services. We've seen them in a number of places in media. I think the Netflix introduction with SoundHound is a really interesting development because one of the things that we've known from the very beginning is that voice and media are a very good pair. It is like this 10x better solution. So I just wanted you to talk maybe a little bit about your thoughts on the custom assistant space or the owned assistant, however you want to talk about it, but the embedded assistant in these applications and how they're not the primary feature of the product, but they are a complementary feature of the product.
Right. I think it's great what SoundHound is trying to do in terms of, it's really developing itself as a company to be prepared for its IPO next year. I think that the fact that it is part of Netflix and trying to take a piece of the smart assistant market, I think is great. They also had claimed that they're going to try to handle food orders and other commerce as well. It's interesting to see what they're trying to do, whether they're able to focus and be able to, get results on those predictions. Well, I guess we'll have to see. I think it's a bit tough when you're a part of, let's say, a Netflix and you're trying to capture like the whole market and kind of extend from there. But I like seeing what they're trying to do. I think with custom assistants, particularly like Erica with Bank of America or the Wells Fargo custom assistant, I think it's doing really well for those companies. And I think, considering how difficult it is to typically navigate a lot of the websites for these companies, having a custom voice assistant to help to make things easier is really helpful. And although it doesn't have like a huge use case in those two examples, I think it really makes it easier for the consumer to save time and navigate and get things done. I know it's always trying for me to get through those websites, so I can appreciate that. But we definitely saw in 2021 an increase in the custom assistant market. A lot of people moving into that market for different reasons. Some businesses don't want to necessarily jump into bed with Amazon. They consider it a competitor. Others want to make sure they protect their own information and keep it all within their own house. But I think at the end of the day, the bigger companies are able to do this, whether it's acquiring other technology or creating it in-house, because they have the money to do so. But I think that over time, you will see that some people are not able to keep up with the advanced technology. As things are evolving, they're not able to maintain that technology. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think that's what's great about having a custom assistant by Amazon is you have the benefit of them continually evolving the technology, but also you have the ability to use that voice component within your own product.
Oh, since you introduced the concept of Alexa Custom Assistant, maybe you just comment on that. That was one of the 2 or 3 biggest stories in the industry, I think, in the first quarter of 2021, because it was earlier than I think a lot of us thought it was going to come. Amazon's really been locked down. Alexa's for Amazon, and then like we have this feudal system where skill makers can come up through Alexa, but all of a sudden they're saying, "Oh no, you can customize it. You can have some ownership of the data. You can have custom voice models or custom language models." When you saw that come out, or were you more optimistic that people would start using it? Because we've only seen maybe 4 examples of that this year.
Yeah, I definitely am more optimistic because just having the option available, I think, is good. It also shows that the technology is going to constantly be evolving. The product is evolving. So that's always a good sign as well. I think, though, that at the end, there's quite a few businesses that are not going to necessarily want to go into the custom assistant market because it's just not financially feasible. And so being able to still have the ability to use an Alexa app and create a skill on Alexa, I think is still going to be a really big part of the market. As much as we want to say that the custom assistant, a lot of people are asking about custom assistant. I think a lot of people are also interested to see how, as a business, they can do it. I think it's just about education, to be honest with you, and how people are educated in terms of how they can use things. And it kind of goes back to the original question that you had asked at the beginning. I think we need to be able to educate people more and more about how they can use, whether it's a custom assistant or voice assistant, as a consumer and as a small business owner. How can you use these different devices? Because I think you would see a bigger slice of voice skills being created in the voice assistant on Alexa if there was more information and education about it. But I think, the bigger companies right now are looking more at the custom assistants, and it's just a matter of time to see if they're able to keep up with that technology.
We're seeing a lot of interest in the custom assistant space. We're also talking to a lot of companies that don't really understand how difficult it is. So, there's basically 2 components. We can do a wake word for a custom assistant that's really, really good and really get it done really, really fast. But then creating that assistant itself requires a lot of data. And because of growing laws, we have California laws now and Illinois coming up, and European laws about data privacy. For the larger companies to collect data and share it with us so we can build those language models is not an easy transfer of information. So what we're seeing is that we need to do more work with these companies to help teach them how to build the language models, or else to figure out ways to automatically build them on their premises, because it really comes down to collecting the data and utilizing in a good way so that they can roll something out that's usable from the start and then gets better with use.
So I wasn't familiar with this, and let me make sure I follow you. So it sounds like, based on some of the new legal frameworks that are out there, that if you are processing in the cloud a certain type of data that might be considered private, then you can't transfer that to your customer.
We're seeing a lot of resistance from bigger companies, kind of the $10 billion plus companies to give us data. So there are very complex agreements that we've signed at times so that we can get access to data. But in general, there's a very large resistance. And part of that could be that the laws aren't as clear as they could be. I still don't understand exactly what defines personally identifiable information. Is my voice personally identifiable if it's not associated with a phone or a name or anything else? It's voice is probably one of the least accurate of the biometrics. So, is gait personally identifiable? That's even less accurate than voice. So there's no real clear distinctions on these things.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's expand this more to the broader move towards custom assistants. You've been in this space for a long time. And what I've noticed is that these custom assistants rolled out by brands or products, call it, whether it's Spotify or Bank of America's Erica, which Chithra mentioned, these are essentially command and control. They're essentially a little bit beyond a command and control interface. It's not like the old keyword spotting or something like that. You're looking for the thing and you bring up a new screen, or it's essentially a button click or something like that. Because there is some intelligence there. They're trying to figure out what you want and route it to the right thing. But they're not trying to have this multi-turn dialogue. And they have a very narrow set of use cases. And so that seems to be where we're headed. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've been using the Spotify car thing a lot, whenever I drive, which isn't a lot, but a lot lately. And I love it. And I'm actually surprised how much I love it. And part of the challenge that it solved for me is that my phone never really connected well with my car because there's so many different Android systems, and I'm one of the rare Android users. And with the car thing, it just works. Now, the voice recognition on it, which I've been experimenting with, we're doing the wake word for that. But then they use a cloud-based solution for understanding what follows the wake word. It works really, really well if you use it properly. And that's kind of some of the magic in these things is getting an understanding of how to use these things. So, in terms of the car thing, it requires a little bit of delay after you say the wake word. You can't just go straight from a wake word to a command. Okay. And it's definitely not a general purpose assistant. I think there are things like I can't ask it maybe I can ask it what time it is, but there's certain functions that I can't do. But what it's really good at is if I want to play songs. And so I think it's smart that they've started with a very clear use case, and that's what's going to make these application-specific, domain-specific custom assistants work really well. Is if that domain usage is clear to the user and they use it within those constraints.
Yeah, I keep thinking the iPod, right? So the iPod, it's just like it did one thing really well. It was very simple, and it reframed the expectations around a category. And it seems to me that there's a lot of custom assistants that have that opportunity.
I would point out that we're leading out a very, I would say, fast-growing realm for custom assistants, whether built by Amazon or Google or independent, is hospitality. There's a very rapid movement. I mean, it's slightly invisible because COVID's slowing down people going to hotels and resorts and everything. But one of the most popular, I guess, white label assistants or platforms for voice assistants, Volara, was acquired this year for apparently quite a lot of money. And meanwhile, Disney is creating their own Alexa custom assistant to use at Disneyland and Disney World. I think that what you were saying, Todd, about the car thing being really good at what it does. I mean, these hospitality-focused voice assistants sometimes have general custom Echo or Google Nest devices attached to them, but what they are focused on is the hotel experience or the hospitality experience, and whether that's ordering extra towels or seeing what's local that you can go out and do, or go to a restaurant. I mean, I think that those kinds of narrower but still very useful use cases are where you're going to see those custom assistants continue to become even more popular.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think hospitality is a really interesting area. And if you compare it with something like self-service drive-throughs for restaurants, quick service restaurants, that's, everybody's been announcing their deals in that space, but nothing's working. And we've gotten some audio data from some of these drive-throughs. It's the worst quality recordings like you could possibly imagine, with cars honking and, distortion. And I think hospitality is going to actually sneak in there and be one of the bigger markets before the whole restaurant industry even takes off.
I don't know if I agree with that. So I've had a couple of founders who are really focused in that space on the podcast in the last quarter. And so I agree with many things you say. I should say, I want to say, I don't know that I would say that hospitality in terms of hotels will leapfrog the drive-through in the next year. I think the thing that's driving the drive-through is, despite all of the challenges, right, with the quality of the input and all these other types of things, they have a severe problem that they have to solve. And I'm not saying that hotels don't have the same problem, because labor shortages are a big deal everywhere. But in the when we talk about the restaurant ordering experience, it is actually a narrower use case than just being in a hotel, and they are so motivated to solve this problem, because it's really interesting. One of the things that I noticed is, like, there's been this transition a few years ago. Whenever we talked about voice AI and automation, right, there was this idea that, oh, it won't displace workers. It'll free them up to do other things, right? And so it's more this like capability enhancer type of. Today, with so many jobs going unfilled, it's basically looked at as something that can actually save these businesses for jobs that no one wants.
Yeah, maybe that's correct. But in self-service restaurants, quick service, it's all about speed. So what they really want is to save time and get more done faster.
Yep.
And if replacing a human with a voice transcription device creates errors that a human then has to look over and make sure it's right, it's not going to be effective. If you get one item wrong in the order, you've got an angry customer. So they're very, very different kind of markets with different drivers. In hospitality, I think there's a lower threshold of what will satisfy people. You need to be able to set alarm clocks. Maybe you hook it in if they have lights and things like that. Maybe you hook it in to control that. And maybe you just connect with the concierge to ask more complex questions.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's great. Okay, let's transition to another topic, and actually maybe we'll stick with you, Todd. This year in the voice AI industry, I think more than any of the previous years that we've looked at, really had a lot of news around financing. And so there's a lot of aspects to financing. So let's talk about this. We have like acquisitions, we have access to the public markets, and we also have venture funding. And all of those, it was way up. But maybe what we should do is start with, let's see. Oh, I've got it right here. You'd mentioned this in the opening, Todd. SoundHound will go public in a $2 billion SPAC. This is an article that Eric wrote a bit ago. It wasn't too long ago. I think it was 3 years ago now. Might have been 4. I think it must have been 3 years ago. They raised $100 million. And that was based on an over $1 billion valuation. I think the first unicorn that we would call in this space that was a pure play in voice. And now they're going public at $2 billion. What did you think of this when this came out, Todd?
Well, I thought it was great. I think it's great news for Kayvon and the SoundHound team. And yes. I think it's great for the industry that they're so well appreciated. I hope they can pull it off. It's doing SPAC mergers is not the easiest thing around. And I think there's being more and more cracking down on it. So, I wish them luck in pulling it off. And I think it is sort of a general trend that we're seeing, whereas 5 years ago, the demand for deep learning engineers was so intense and there were so few that we saw a lot of acquisitions really just to get people. And I think that's changed now. I think what's being valued isn't just the people are valuable, but also traction. And SoundHound is one of the few companies in the space that's really gotten good traction and they're being valued for it.
Yeah, I think it's a general purpose assistant. SoundHound is like the key alternative. And I was really happy to see them do the Netflix deal. they'd previously done deals with Pandora and Snapchat. And I think that's like a very logical place for them to grow. And media needs this. It's a great use case. And many of the media companies are a little wary of the big tech giants, and they want more control, all the things that you would expect. And so I really thought that was a really good move by them to go that direction. But
well, let me ask you about that and maybe challenge you a little bit, Brett. I don't actually get the Netflix deal, because for me, when I'm watching a movie, I don't need voice control. It's when I turn on the TV and I have to decide, do I want Netflix, or do I want Amazon Prime, or do I want Hulu? That's where I use voice, and Comcast gives me that already. So why do I need an assistant within Netflix when what I really want is to be able to navigate there in the first place?
Well, I think part of it is you're spoiled because you have Comcast, and it's actually one of the better solutions. Not everybody has that. Also, if you look at the demographic trends, most people are going to, or the biggest trend is over the top and actually dispensing with the cable providing all together. And so then you're going to the streaming media services directly. And my experience, and I've had Comcast, I've had other solutions as well. The voice experience for television is a 10x better experience. And that's what we always think about in tech is it going to be 10 times better than what's happening today? And given that the way we've historically had to navigate media, it is a lot better. And actually the Netflix interface is not that great. I mean, it just takes forever to get through things. The search is not good. And I talk about the search is not good. It's not that it doesn't bring up the right results. It just takes a long time to get through the process when we're so much better than that.
I think the biggest issue is biometrics. I want my TV to look at me and not have to go through that step of, is it me, or is it my wife, or is it one of my 4 kids?
Well, Sentry actually, Sentry could maybe do that. You have the technology to do that. I know that Pindrop they did a deal with somebody. Who was it? I think it was earlier this year, where they're actually identifying people by voice as they walk in the room, and then they're changing what the assortment of media are on the screen for them. Yep. So that personalization, I'm 100% for. I think that would be a great thing. But I do think that the Netflix experience with voice is a great move, long overdue. What do you think, Chithra?
I mean, I kind of, I'm kind of torn, because I think like once you're in the Netflix and you find what you want to watch, at least for myself, I'm pretty content. And I think it just depends, I guess, on the person and, how they want their experience to be. But I'm of the type that I don't like lots of distractions. But if it's going to help me navigate more easily, then I'm all for it. But like you, Brett, I've tried a lot of different types of, different types of assistants to activate my television, and it does make for a better experience. So I guess it's just a matter of to see how it ends up working out over time.
Eric, you've been known to watch a little television. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's worth noting that what Netflix is doing it's not just for streaming on Netflix. The idea is that Netflix is providing a software package for a set-top box maker, so that it will have a bunch of different abilities or features built into it, including SoundHound's voice assistant, so that a Toshiba or whoever can make a smart TV set-top and not have to design their own voice assistant. It will be the Netflix voice assistant powered by SoundHound that's inside. So it's a way to give people who don't want to have a Fire TV or a Google TV access to a similar level of voice interactions. And with the addition of some of SoundHound's more ability to add more unique features. When I spoke with SoundHound, they said they were getting a lot of feedback from people who really liked that they added a command where when you're watching something, you just say, what did he say? And it will rewind 10 seconds and turn on the subtitles for you. So that if somebody's whispering, you don't have to manually rewind or do anything more complicated than asking the voice assistant the way you would ask someone sitting next to you on the couch what someone said.
But I would say, isn't this all about like first mover advantage as well? Like, who is the one that's going to get our attention? Because I feel like SoundHound is also trying to move into the space where it's not just, like you said, working alongside Netflix, but it's also trying to get our food orders and other items. So in my opinion, it kind of comes down to whoever you've adopted into your life first. And if it's, satisfying your needs because you get packages all the time, then maybe you spend most of your time on one device more than another one. So I feel like that has a lot to do with it too, in terms of how it's going to get adopted.
Definitely. I would say it's a play for making the TV essentially a smart display on your wall that SoundHound has control over.
Well, yeah, SoundHound or whoever the media brand is,
right,
using SoundHound technology.
Right.
And SoundHound has a lot of flexibility there for ownership. So yeah, I just don't see us having a single assistant world. And so even though I do most of my shopping through Amazon and we do use Prime a lot, we use other media as well, right? And so in fact, it's like you're forced into it now. Like every media conglomerate has their own app and they have a lot of exclusives in them now. So it's really hard to choose one. They all know they don't want to all give up control to one of the big bad tech overlords. And so we're going to need these affordances in a lot of places. I think we're stuck with a multi-assistant world, whether we like it or not.
Well, and hopefully an assistant emerges that does the least advertising to us.
All right. Yes, that's true. Well, there is one assistant which might have more designs on that than others, but they all like advertising because it's just a great way to monetize our attention. I think what we should do is actually just do a quick look forward. I'm happy to have you, like, as we go around the table, talk about anything else that you think we should have talked about, because there was a lot of news this year. And I think we focused more on the consumer side, and there was a lot of enterprise news, which we've talked about a lot in another podcast recently. But I'm happy to talk about anything you think we missed. But I'd also like you to say, hey, what are you most looking forward to in this space in 2022? And why don't we start with you, Todd?
Sure. So I have a very self-centered thought on this. Sensory's been in the embedded space for 27 years, and we're rolling out our first cloud-based set of technologies. And we'll announce that at CES just in a few weeks. But what I'm really looking forward to is when we combine the cloud and the on-device technologies together for some really unique kind of hybrid experiences that will address a lot of cost and power consumption issues. It will address accuracy issues. It's really going to be the best of all worlds. And I think what we'll see over time, looking forward, is that more and more companies move into these hybrid interactive kind of environments for voice.
Yeah, I think, I thought that performance was going to be the key driver of on-device more so than privacy. I know we've talked about that in the past. But these hybrid solutions, someone brought this up to me recently, and you just touched on it, there is a power consumption benefit there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we do it all on device, we're going to consume more power.
Got it. So we have to have a balance there. Anything else you want to share about your cloud solution?
Well, we're going to have speech to text. We're going to have text to speech. We're going to have biometrics on it. And we'll be able to do a lot of neat things to revalidate, like a lot of companies use our wake word. We'll be able to put a giant wake word in the cloud so that we can make the performance even better.
Got it. And along those lines, in terms of what you're providing, do you think of it as providing an assistant? Do you think of it as providing a voice interactive interface? How do you characterize that when you think about your product line?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what's pretty unique about us is that we don't have a can mold. We have a very wide suite of technologies, and we can customize for what anybody wants. I think Chithra mentioned earlier that a lot of companies don't want to work with a Google or an Amazon, but they want to have things in-house. And we can help companies move the technologies in-house. So we offer a lot of flexibility, a lot of control. In the cloud kind of space, we can offer an on-premise solution where we just supply a container that works, or we can route it through an Amazon cloud. So just a lot of flexibility rather than pre-built ways of working with companies.
Got it. And your top prediction for 2022, or the thing you're most looking forward to?
Well, rolling out the cloud, sensorycloud.ai. We've got a website for it.
All right, let's bring you up on stage, Eric.
Sure.
What did we? Is there anything we missed this year, and what are you most looking forward to next year?
I would say, I mean, as you said, there's a lot of news, but of the two things I was thinking that it's interesting that we didn't get to, one is the healthcare space. Between consumer healthcare and the voice AI that doctors are using. I mean, there's a lot of money and a lot of interest sloshing around there for some of the same reasons we were talking about in terms of the workforce and other reasons. But and then the other thing is, the sort of the missing elephant in the room is that we didn't even talk about Apple at all, because there's not much to say, really. New AirPods, new colors for the HomePod Mini, but no HomePod. I mean, it's a fascinating story where there's a few areas where Apple is incredibly dominant, but otherwise it seems to have just sort of given up on trying to compete in this space.
And what are you looking forward to for next year?
I'm looking forward to, related to the healthcare thing, but the way that the sort of consumer to business approach of voice tech that's sort of different from previous kinds of technology that filtered from the office to the home. I think that you're going to see a lot more casual use of voice tech for people in offices or people who are working remotely. I think there's just going to be a lot more utility, a lot more understanding of the utility of a voice AI secretary or a voice AI customer service in a way that it's starting to appear, but I think there's a lot of room for growth there.
Okay, yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. Well, we'll have to look for that. All right, Chithra, you're on the hot spot. So what do you think? Do we miss something that you would have liked to have spent more time talking about that was a big story of the year?
Well, I mean, I agree with Eric emphatically about the healthcare aspect. I think it's going to be really important, especially with labor shortages going to possibly increase with the pandemic ensuing. So seeing how voice assistants can help, especially, when healthcare workers are using their gloves on a regular basis and can't necessarily take them off to do inventory, repair, give education to patients, being able to have that consistency, those checklists available, whether it's in the office or at home, and continue that care. I think the continuity of care that voice can provide is amazing, and I love to see where that plays out. I also think one thing that's going to be interesting is how the technology of Alexa is going to be marketed in the next few years. So I think we're going to start to see businesses use the technology in different ways. I know of one company that's looking to offer a multi-user approach, so you can see different skills at the same time, and people can upload their content onto a platform and still use the Alexa technology. So innovative ways of how people are going to use the technology to be able to do creation and continue their content creation over time, I think is going to be really interesting. And I think the innovation behind marketing of skills, I think is going to be really interesting, in how people use audio. For instance, if a show decides to have a scavenger hunt and you go to different parts of LA that are included in the show to get different clues, to then end up at an event, which is possibly a virtual event, and you have this immersive experience. I think you're going to see more of that, particularly, after the Travis Scott incident and how many people are having, issues when they go to in-live performances. I think you're going to see a lot more people move away from in person and more towards hybrid or virtual events, and how audio plays into that, I think is going to be really interesting. And I'm excited about what we're doing with voice skills. We offer geo-specificity within our skills. We allow people to create their own NFTs on the platform and sell them virtually on their skills. So being able to use our API and be able to really get more connection with fans and your consumers and people who love your product, I think is going to be a big, thing that plays out in the next few years, and how
That's
people use that creatively.
Yeah. So why don't you tell people how they can keep track of what you're doing or find out more about your work?
Sure. So I'm on all the social media platforms, including TikTok at DRDURGAM. And I'm also on Instagram at Blue Check Skill. You can find me at bluecheckskill.com.
Cool.
Thank
And Todd, why don't you tell people about how they can learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. Well, Sensory's website is www.sensory.com, and the Sensory Cloud has its own, as mentioned, sensorycloud.ai.
Okay, perfect. And Eric, we should allow you to do the same thing.
So you can find all my stories on Voicebot.ai, and you can find my social handles there, but Twitter just at Eric H. Schwartz, and you'll find me tweeting mostly about voice tech.
Perfect. Okay, and I'm at Brett Kinsella on Twitter. Obviously, Voicebot.ai is a place that I spend a lot of time. And another place that I'm encouraging people to spend time is in the Voicebot community Discord. It's really a voice AI community Discord. It's predominantly for people in the industry. I mean, we put a little bit of content up there that Eric creates a lot, some other things, but we have conversations, people connect with folks on there, and there's a place for you to post your product launches, your customer wins, your blog posts and stuff like that. So it's really an industry resource. And what I thought I would do, because I just had this idea the other day when I was recording a show, is we have Botcoin. If you don't know what Botcoin is, just go to voicebot.ai/Botcoin. You can learn more about it. It's a cryptocurrency, but it's really an affinity token. It's just like we recognize each other, we have fun with it, that type of thing. But I'll give some away. So anybody who goes to the Voicebot Discord, and there's called the All the Things chat. It's like our general channel. So the All the Things chat channel. And you put in your Rally username. So Rally is how you get your Botcoin. So rally.io. If you don't have an account, it takes about a minute to sign up. You don't have to buy anything. But if you just put your Rally username in there and you put 2022, just in a message, you just do that. I'll notice that and I'll send you some Botcoin. So people will win some free Botcoin, which will be fun. If you're not in the Discord already, it is voicebot.ai/Discord. We have a lot of things that we're going to be doing in the first part of the year in there. But that's a place for us, not just to like broadcast like our stories or this type of thing that we put on YouTube for everyone. It's really, it's for 600, 700 people who are in the industry who care about this every day, to connect and talk and to reach out to each other. And so that's why we encourage people to do it, because it's been a fun enterprise that we've been focused on the last 6 months. Okay, everybody, that is the year in review 2022. I'm really glad we focused so much on consumer, because I just had another set of conversations around enterprise. Eric is absolutely right. We didn't cover nearly as much as the enterprise. You can look at, I guess, part one of the voice year in review sessions for 2021 to get more on that. But this coming year, a lot more enterprise applications. We just see them growing, but consumer's not going to be left behind. We saw consumer for a couple of years dominate this market, and now we see the enterprise stories are really the dominant ones. And I'll just say this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate all of you spending some time at the end of the year when I know you have a lot of other things to do. So thanks again, Todd, Chithra, and Eric for joining me today.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.